Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's going on, Fantasy Champs? My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon with me as always. Papa Rick.
What's up?
We got a good show for you. We're going to try to, expedite this processes, and maybe we can get this done in 20 minutes. But it is weekly starts and sits. How you doing, Rick?
I'm doing pretty well. How about you? This show is usually kind of a longer one, too, because we both have starts and sits, but we can try.
Yeah, we can try. It'll be interesting. We're hopping into week 8 here. I need to get a win in fantasy. Is desperate. I'm desperate. Desperate need of a win.
We're pretty much halfway through the NFL season.
Yeah. Pretty well. We're getting there. 17 weeks. It's usually like week 9, maybe 10.
Yeah. Isn't that kind of crazy though?
But we're getting. Yeah. I don't like this.
Lions Chiefs opening night feels like it was like a week ago.
It really does. But luckily, we still get playoffs and all the way to February, which is not close. So.
Yeah.
But anyway, weekly starts and sits for this episode. Before we jump into those, check out our website, fantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcasting platforms, please leave a review, share this pod with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. Click the bell for notifications, like and comment down below. It's the only way you can support the podcast. We don't ask you for money. We ask you for support.
Nah, give
Subscribe
us both.
like.
We want your money.
It's really simple.
For no reason.
We want your money. People on podcasts, they're being like, hey, head over to my Patreon and pay me money. And I'm like, bro, I'm just trying to get likes here.
Yeah, one step at a time.
Yeah.
Come
on. But anyway, so we got our starts and sits as we usually do on this show. We'll try to expedite these and get them to you as fast as possible. And we'll start with the quarterback position. I'm going to start with Mr. CJ Stroud.
Yeah, you're starting the home league. Always a dangerous game.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
Although I will say I had Gibbs as my start of the week at running back last week, and he got 27. So,
yeah,
maybe the streak continues for you.
Who knows? Maybe. But no, I think for Stroud, this is an interesting matchup. Obviously, he's coming off a bye week. He's had some time off, so rest up and get ready for this game against Carolina. Carolina's 0-6. They tend to run a slower offense. So because of that, there's less opportunities for the quarterback to have success. They give about 15 fantasy points a game to the quarterback position. So it's not, they're like right in the middle of the pack in terms of, how many fantasy points they give up to the quarterback position. But he's topped 20 plus fantasy points in 3 straight weeks. His floor is about 14 or 15 fantasy points. So he falls somewhere in the middle of that. I think in this game, I don't know is Bryce Young starting too? He's not hurt, right? He's good. He's good to go.
Bryce Young is playing. Oh, so it's first. I didn't even think of that.
Hey.
First overall pick versus second.
So I don't know if Carolina is going to be able to score, and I don't know if this is going to be a back and forth high scoring game. I would imagine it's not, but I do think that Stroud can give you a base point total of 14, 15 points. Like he can start there. And then if he has a really good week and throws, 3 touchdown passes, you'll be somewhere in the 20s and you'll feel good about, playing him this week. But I think there are more risky picks to throw out there than CJ Stroud. So I think this is a decent matchup for him. I think he'll be back. I think he will, he'll have a really good game. And I think this is a guy you can start if you're looking for a quarterback play this week.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's not bad. Panthers are actually a good matchup against quarterbacks, but as you were saying to me earlier, it's one of those things where they're so bad against the run and they've been in so many blowouts that statistically they're good, but their defense has been horrible this year. So it is a game where Stroud, I think, can at least put up some solid numbers. My guy, is my sit of the week last week that you said was a hot take.
Oh.
And he only scored 10 fantasy points.
Okay.
It's Jared Goff as my start, flip-flopping. I still don't think Goff is this elite quarterback. So when he has good matchups, I'll play him. When he has bad matchups, I'll probably not play him and be very cautious about it. And last week, he did not have a good game. He ended up kind of saving his week with 10 points. He had like 4 points going into the fourth quarter. It was really, really bad. But against the Raiders, it's a good matchup. It's Monday Night Football. It's at home. I think he gets his get back this week, and he does a very good job against the Raiders team that is quite frankly not very good. They lost by like 20 plus points to the Bears last week. I don't think outside of Max Crosby, there's nothing really there on defense to me that scares me. Their offense is really inconsistent. When Garoppolo is healthy, it's okay, but it's not great. So like I feel like this is a game where the Lions could destroy him, and I feel like it could be a big time game for Jared Goff.
Yeah, get right game for the Lions.
It's a get right.
My sit of the week at quarterback, moving on, is Geno versus
you're just doing your two quarterbacks.
Yeah, this is good. This is good. It's an easy decision for me.
There you go.
But it's Geno Smith versus the Cleveland Browns. So on the season, he's been okay. He's had a lot of mid games, but last week I think I even picked him as a start, and he finished with around 14 or under fantasy points. I can't remember the exact total. In our 5-point touchdown league, it was a little bit better, but
he had 16 in our league.
Yeah, so he only had 14 this week for regular people. So I would say that's generally a bust. I mean, it was okay.
Yeah,
doesn't really get you a good performance, but he's only topped 16 fantasy points. He's only come up with 16 fantasy points one time this year, so he hasn't been good. And the Cleveland Browns are coming up. They're coming into town, and they don't allow quarterbacks to score a lot of fantasy points on the season. This defense, I think, is fifth. Let me just pull up the numbers. I'm trying to find.
They're up there.
They're fifth in points given up to the quarterback position, or their fifth toughest matchup, I should say. 14 points per game to the quarterback position. So it's going to be a tough matchup for Geno Smith. He hasn't really performed great this season. There haven't been a lot of opportunities for him, and this, to me, just spells a bad week to start Geno. So I would sit him this week and save yourself a little bit.
Yeah, fair enough. My stud of the week at quarterback is the guy that Jared Goff got traded for, which is Matt Stafford. Against the Dallas Cowboys, the Cowboys, similar to the Browns, have been very good this year against quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Even though their defense might not be as good as it was when they had Diggs, it's still pretty solid. And the game is in Dallas, so it should be tough for Stafford. And Stafford, he's not available in a lot of leagues. Like, he's owned in a lot of leagues. I think he's been started a couple weeks. I know in our league he's been started in a couple weeks, but he really hasn't been great. He's been consistent. He hasn't had like an absolute turd of a game, but he also hasn't scored more than, I think, 17 fantasy points was his highest.
Yeah.
So he's living at like 13 to 17 points every single week, which, like, if you have a bye week at quarterback and you want that, that's fine.
Yeah.
But against Dallas, I don't think that changes. I don't think he's all of a sudden going to get more than 17 points in one of his toughest matchups yet. So I'm going to say he gets probably like around 15 points this week, and I wouldn't be starting that.
Okay, fair enough. Not bad. I agree. I agree with that. I was actually thinking about Matt Stafford at Dallas because Dallas, they're a good defense. They do good things.
Yeah, they are.
I mean, just a little bit good. All right, let's move to running back. I got Alexander Mattison at Green Bay as a start.
Oh, are you just doing your whole team?
I don't know. It feels like it. I don't have the
He's
next two
doing
guys.
his team.
I don't have the next two guys. But
Okay.
I do have a guy that was on my fantasy team that's on the sit list. Actually, two guys that are on the sit list. So this is accidental, I swear. Alexander Mattison, though, at Green Bay. Green Bay, they give up a lot of fantasy points to the running back position, a total of 24 points per game. And Madison is the clear-cut one. Now, I will say there was a lot of opportunity given to Cam Akers this past week, and he actually looked okay in his snaps. But one thing that I did notice is the big no-no when it comes to being a freaking running back in this league. He got Kirk Cousins smushed a couple of times. Terrible blocking. So, if Cam Akers can't pass block, I don't see how he finds the field as much as Alexander Mattison does. But for the most part, Alexander Mattison is the main guy. He's going up against this really easy matchup against the Green Bay Packers. I think Minnesota kind of needs to get the ground game going, and they're gonna obviously the passing attack has been great and they've been doing good things with that, but I think their attempt is going to be to get the ground game going, give some opportunities to Madison. Maybe he scores a touchdown in this game. I think he has some fantasy points in him. Even if there's like 25, 30, 40% of the 35% of the snaps go to Cam Akers, I think Madison will get a majority of those fantasy points and finish somewhere around 15. So I would start him this week if you have him against a good matchup in Green Bay.
I agree, and I don't love Madison, but if he's on your team,
You
this
do
is the
remind me
type
of that
week.
every time I say his name, though.
Yeah, I do, because I've never been a fan of him. I mean, I liked him as a handcuff, but anyway, it's not bad because Green Bay is a very good matchup. So if he's on your team,
Yeah.
you got some bye weeks, maybe you got some injuries or something. This would be the week where you plug him into your flex, and I think you feel okay about it.
For sure.
My guy is someone who has been very bad this year. That's Dameon Pierce. He has been very underwhelming. It's mostly due to his passing work, which we kind of knew that going in. But last year he was a lot more efficient on the ground. He hasn't been efficient on the ground, and he doesn't get enough targets or receptions to make up for it. So he's been very bad this year. So you're asking me probably why do you want me to start him? He sucks. He's on my bench.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want him near my starting lineup. And I'll tell you why. I'll bring you some stats. This pick, I should say, is more about the Panthers. You had C.J. Stroud as your start of the week at quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
I have Dameon Pierce as my start of the week at running back. Do you know how many yards per game the Panthers give up on the ground?
How many? Enlighten me.
144. Which is ridiculous. Only the Broncos are worse.
For Pierce?
So they're second worst in the league. They're also second worst in the league in fantasy points. They rank 31st among running backs, so it is the second easiest matchup for a running back in fantasy. If Dameon Pierce can't perform this week, he's droppable. I mean, because this is the easiest matchup he's going to get all season long.
Yeah.
The Panthers' rush defense absolutely blows. They absolutely blow against running backs. It's also a favorable matchup in terms of, this could be a sneaky random game where the Panthers, they're 0-6. Maybe they pull it out. But on the surface level, it should be a game where the Texans are winning. Mm-hmm. And it should be a good game script-wise for Dameon Pierce. So this is the week to start him. I think he has a good game in him, and if he doesn't, you might as well drop him.
Okay, I was going to say another guy because I was looking at Dameon Pierce too, but I was really nervous based on the numbers that he's put out on the season.
Yeah.
It was Ramondre Stevenson. He's another guy. And he's going up against Miami, who's poop against the run.
Yeah, they are.
And Stevenson's been okay. There's been moments where he's been good, and then there's
last couple weeks he's been okay.
He's been okay the last couple weeks.
It's mostly because his receiving now. So in a non-PPR league, he's great.
He's splitting opportunities now with Zeke, and it makes me nervous to say start Ramondre. So I didn't put him on the list, but he also could be an okay play because he's got a good matchup. So anyway, let's move to sits at the running back position. I got Najee Harris versus Jacksonville. Don't be freaking conned into the Najee Harris crap because he sucks. I'm done with Najee.
Wow.
He had 15 points this week. He scored a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
So that means he scored 7, really, without the touchdown. And basically, Najee Harris did the same exact thing he normally does without a touchdown. And a lot of people are just going to be like, oh, Najee Harris. No, I'd sit him this week. Jacksonville's a good defense. They stop the run, generally speaking. The official numbers are 15 points a game to the running back position. They like to get their other guys involved. So it's going to be a situation where you'll probably see another 5, 6, 7-point game for Najee Harris, and I don't want nothing to do with that. So you can sit him this week in full confidence.
Yeah, my guy is Kareem Hunt. And I said, he could be an okay flex some weeks, kind of like Jermaine Ford.
Yeah.
But other weeks I wouldn't want to go near him. He's ranked, I think, as RB22 this week on Fantasy Pros, which means that's probably a start.
Yeah.
I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole. Last 2 weeks he has 16 and 15, so that's pretty good. But he has 3 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks. This past week against the Colts, he had 15 fantasy points. He had 2 touchdowns.
Oh my God.
So you take away those 2 touchdowns, he had 3 fantasy points.
Mm.
He had 10 carries for 31 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's nothing. And he didn't do anything in the air. He had 1 target, 0 catches. So against Seattle, it's not a great matchup, and he's so touchdown reliant. So I think you put him on your bench this week. I wouldn't go near Kareem Hunt. I think this is a week where he gets 4 fantasy points. And he really is touchdown reliant, and not just that, but his snap percentage. Ford is the 1A, Kareem Hunt is the 1B. Ford sits around like a 50-something% snap percentage. Kareem Hunt sits around like a 25 to 30% snap percentage. So I don't know why you want to start a guy with a 30% snap percentage in a bad matchup, but if you want to go ahead, I would say so.
Yeah, agreed. All right, let's move to the wide receiver position, and I'll give you Zay Flowers at Arizona.
A good one.
I feel like I put the Arizona Cardinals, any wide receiver playing Arizona, I usually put on this list because Arizona gives up 32.8 fantasy points a game to the wide receiver position. It's just brutal. Their secondary sucks. And they did get Budda Baker back, so maybe that helps them. But their secondary just hasn't been good. And I think that Zay Flowers is the most consistent and best wide receiver weapon that Baltimore has. And they force feed him the ball, generally speaking. So I think in this game where they give up a lot of fantasy points to the wide receiver position, Lamar's going to get the ball to Zay Flowers, and Zay Flowers is going to have a good game. I think this is a fantastic matchup for him, and I think you got to get him in your lineup.
Yeah, my guy who I'm nervous about this one, but I feel like it's a very good opportunity for, just like Jared Goff, this is my get back week, all right? I got get back guys. My guy's Calvin Ridley. He's been very up and down this year. It's a roller coaster of emotions. In the last week, he was hit rock bottom, it feels like. He had 1.5 points. He only had 4 targets, 1 catch for 5 yards. This is his worst game in the last couple of years. Not just this year, but even when he was playing before the suspension. He never hit 1 fantasy point.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back on his career, actually, I want to say, that was his worst year since his second year in the NFL, 2019. Worst game since 2019. And he didn't play in 2022, but he played in 2020 the full season. And he played the full season in 2021. So really, really bad for Calvin Ridley. And I think it is a perfect bounce back week. The Steelers defense is good, but they're middle of the pack versus receivers. Their secondary is kind of their weakness. They have a couple of guys like Mika Fitzpatrick at safety, but their corners aren't great. Joey Porter Jr. looks like he could be okay, but he doesn't really play a ton. So it's vulnerable there in the secondary, and I think Calvin Ridley can take advantage of it. I'm going to say they're going to try to get to him early, and they're going to try to get him involved in this game. I like Calvin Ridley this week.
Okay. Yeah, not a bad one. My sit this week at wide receiver, trying to find it, is Jerry Jeudy versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City, I mean, their defense is cooking with grease. 24.5 fantasy points a game given up to the wide receiver position, which is a top 10 tough matchup for the wide receiver position. I will say this is going to be a game where Denver's probably going to have to throw the ball a lot. So it might end up being a plus matchup for either Courtland Sutton or Jerry Jeudy, where they're going to be running around and maybe getting a lot of targets. But it's also in Denver, so that might not be the case. It might be closer than we anticipate. I don't know. The freaking Pats just knocked off the Bills, so anything goes in this league, I guess. But no, so Jerry Jeudy, in this matchup, he kind of has been okay on the season. He's been getting about 5-6 targets a game. He hasn't been awful, but he also is not getting enough opportunity on the season so far to warrant throwing him in your lineup every week and getting a good start out of him. So I think against the tougher matchups, you probably shouldn't start him. You should probably keep him out of your lineup and go with another option. But I do think at some point there is going to be a time where Jerry Jeudy becomes maybe okay to play on a week-to-week basis, especially if he gets traded at the deadline. But this week is not that against Kansas City.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so for the sake of my dynasty Jerry Jeudy shares, but I'm losing faith.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, my guy's DeAndre Hopkins. He's also been very up and down this season.
Mm-hmm.
And Ryan Tannehill is now out. I don't think they put him on IR, but he's expected to miss at minimum 1 game, could be more. But he's expected to miss this week. A.J. Terrell on Atlanta is going to be matched up against him, who is one of the best corners in the league. Atlanta's defense isn't that bad. They've definitely improved. They're top half in the league, at least. And because of that, it's not a great matchup for Hopkins, who's going to be matched up against Terrell with that good Falcons defense. And with Tannehill out, Will Levis is expected to start. He could be good. He could really suck. They're also going to use Malik Willis. Mike Vrabel said they're going to use 2 quarterbacks this week. That just feels like a disaster for any wide receiver. And when Malik Willis is out there, he's definitely like a run first type of quarterback, or he's a first read type of quarterback, then run.
Yeah.
So none of that seems good for Hopkins, where it could be a game where they only throw the ball like 20 times. So the only hope this week for Hopkins is Will Levis plays the full game and he has a Justin Herbert-like debut.
He's like, oh, you know what? Hopkins not open. I'm running it.
Yep.
That's essentially what the offense is going to be.
Pretty much.
Okay, let's move to the tight ends and talk about the tight end position. At tight end,
I just realized I didn't even look at this beforehand. Yeah, I feel like I do this every week. I pick the same tight end.
We'll just talk about him and call it a day.
Okay.
So my start at tight end this week is Darren Waller versus the Jets. Obviously, if you got your 22-point game against Darren Waller, you're probably just going to roll him out anyway, so this is a safe pick. But I think Darren Waller is fantastic, and I think at some point in this season, he's going to come on, and he's going to end up being a top 5 tight end in fantasy football. You just got to wait for it, and I think the start of it happened last week. This week going up against the New York Jets. Jets are really good at shutting down the outer sides of the field, but for whatever reason, those seams and the inside part of the field, they have a tough time with the tight end position, giving up 13.2, which leads the league in the easiest matchup in fantasy football against the New York Jets. So I think this is a good matchup for Darren Waller. I think he's going to cook this week. And if freaking Daniel Jones can stand in the pocket and make a throw, it's going to be to Darren Waller. So,
or maybe just ride with Tyrod.
Yeah, ride with Tyrod. Tyrod might even play. But yeah, Darren Waller versus Jets. It's a plus matchup. Send him out there.
Yeah, that's a good one. After last week, he's already back to being a top 5 tight end. He's tied at 5 on the season.
Okay.
So I feel like that's where he is, and it is a good matchup as well. So good one. I try to go a little off the board here. Try to go a little risque.
Okay. All right.
Since the last couple of weeks, I think I had Waller last week, but I had Kittle. So I've had some pretty straightforward, easy picks for tight end. So I did try to go a little crazy this week. It's Trey McBride. I have Trey McBride as my start of the week against Baltimore. I wanted to do Dalton Kincaid, but we released the show when it's not. We record the show on Thursday. We release it either Friday or Saturday. So I couldn't do Kincaid because he already played. So I hope he ends up having a good week because that would be my first choice.
Yeah.
But my second choice is Trey McBride. And the reason I do this is he hasn't been great this year. Obviously, he's kind of the second tight end in the offense. But the last couple weeks, his snap percentage has gone up. His targets last 3 weeks, 3, 5, 6. Okay, so it's going up. And now Zach Ertz has been placed on IR this week. So similar to Dalton Kincaid, Trey McBride's going to have a real opportunity.
Suit up, Trey.
Offense. It's against the Ravens, who, just like the Jets, have a very good defense, but versus tight ends, for some reason, it's not great, or it's not bad, I should say. They're middle of the pack, so their weakness is kind of against tight ends for some reason, I think, just defending the middle of the field. So Trey McBride could, you got a bye week at tight end, you got an injury at tight end, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You need a tight end, and Trey McBride's going to be available on your waiver wire. I'm okay with picking him up, playing him this week, see how he does.
Okay. All right. And the final guy that we have here that we're going to talk about, Rick and I both have our sit of the week at tight end, which is Luke Musgrave versus Minnesota. Listen up, Musgrave. For whatever reason, the fantasy football community, it got themselves all lubed up over Luke Musgrave. And they started ranking him in ridiculous ranges, I'll tell you. They started putting him in the conversation of like top 12, and he is currently on season tight end 23, so I don't know where that's coming from. He's had 8, 4, 10, 1, 9, 7 on the season, so he hasn't been that bad, but I don't know. He's just a mid tight end. He's a middling tight end. He doesn't really get a rookie
tight end.
He's a rookie tight end, but he doesn't get a lot of opportunity to score touchdowns. This week he's going up against Minnesota. And Minnesota has given up to the tight end position about 9 points per game. So it's not like a brutal matchup, but I can't buy into Luke Musgrave as a start on a week-to-week basis. I think this is going to be a tougher matchup for him. And then he's also questionable for this game, so keep an eye on that. But yeah, I wouldn't start Musgrave. His snap percentages also have been decreasing by the week for whatever reason. So
Yeah, I wouldn't start him. I mean, he's a rookie tight end. Like,
what do you
I get the hype is good. He's overall having a good season for a rookie tight end. I think he's got some potential for sure, but he should not be a week-to-week start.
Okay. All right. There you go. I almost hit the wrong intro button. Whew, that would have been bad. There are your starts and sits. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Please comment down below any questions you may have for us pertaining to starts and sits this week and matchups. We still got trade targets this week, so be sure to check that episode out. We'll see you later, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.